5 munud. Gyfeillion. Mae'n amser i ni agor y drysau i'r byd. Mi fydd yna gyfeillion ar y pryd i bob iaith o dan hael a lleia Duw. A mi hoffwn ni gychwyn cyn bwrw iddi efo ymddeheiriad bach am ddod ger eich bron ar fath olwg yna i. Gys i wybod ddoen ar peth gorau at beth fel hyn ydy rhoi llefrith yna fo. A mae rai gen i na Cymro ddudodd hynny gyntaf. Right. I've thought long and hard about how I should open this discussion after 90 years of life and work. And I thought I would just say marmalade.
Good word. One of my favourite words, as a matter of fact.
Well, exactly. And the thing is that you maybe know by now that Jan has marmalade every morning, but not the same marmalade. There are 7 marmalade pots. I've got a picture of them, if you'd like. Marmalades. And that's how I'd like to begin this serious discussion.
But I would stay fresh for a little bit longer.
Well, now we turn to something completely different, but maybe not, because this is something that wasn't touched upon this morning, if you were here during the discussions, is that more and more, so you tell me when we go for a walk, 1,000 paces. And maybe, we won't go into it now, but maybe those marmalades are an allegory of something, a different marmalade every morning. Think about it. It probably has some allegorical meaning.
Have you only just thought of that?
extremely meticulous and like an architectural drawing, a bit like Clough's buildings in a way. I've never thought of this before, but did you ever have any desire to design buildings?
No, no. Well, I suppose it does incidentally, but chiefly it's been the look of buildings. You know, I just like the shape of them, the look of them, the same way as I like the look of ships. But they both have obviously intricate meanings, immeasurable meanings beyond themselves. And there we get back to the question of allegory, don't we? Double meaning.
A lot of research before you go to a country, or have done in the past, or whether you just go there?
Well, of course. I don't want to be utterly ignorant about them, obviously.
Because what you say is simply grin like a dog and run about the city, which is a biblical quotation.
It is, yes. I think it's a very good command for the traveller. It's the best thing to do. Or, as somebody else said, wander aimlessly about.
Yeah.
Both those two things I do a lot of. Wandering aimlessly and grinning like a dog and running about the city.
But there was a suggestion this morning that the aimlessness is not quite as aimless as it might appear.
Well, it's aimful because I know what I'm doing. But I use the technique of wandering around and grinning like a dog in order to be able to write something tangible and reasonable and sensible and makes sense, I mean. And allegorical too.
And connected with this was the question of language. That, well, it was suggested, libelously I thought, that you weren't a great linguist.
No, not libelous at all.
And so how is it that you can immediately land somewhere totally foreign with a very, unintelligible language, and yet be able to communicate so successfully with people?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. There's something in it. Very often it is true. I don't know a smattering of a language. But somehow when I get to talk to people, if we like each other, we get through anyway. And they know what I want to know, usually speaking. And I sort of muddle my way through, really. Is that an answer?
No. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
that's about it.
And yes, there was a question also of how much of the detail in these, especially the travel essays, is true. In the sense, literal truth. And it seems to me that a book like Last Letters from Harve proves that you can write a truth which is not true at all. You can write about a place that doesn't exist, and yet is true.
Every word of Harv is true, although every word of it is fiction.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's become a truth, has it not? That's an unfair example, really, because it was meant to be fiction, and frankly, the only trouble was that people thought it wasn't fiction. As a matter of fact, it's a place I invented entirely, an imaginary city, and yet when it went into print, people wrote and asked how they got a visa to go there. So their truth and fiction really is genuinely mixed up. But it does become a truth once it's done, isn't it? The truth is what you can make.
Yeah. So that when you go to some city and write about it, it's not necessarily exactly as you write about.
No, it's me looking at a city.
Yeah.
It's my responses to the city. That's why it isn't travel writing.
Yes. Because you said recently that it's not travel writing because you don't write about the travel. You write about being there, and it's imperative that you should be there because it's not about really the city either, is it? It's about you're looking at the city.
It is, that's exactly it. Yeah. It's because it's a vision of a city through the eyes of one particular person. So another person, of course, devises, extracts another truth from the same experience. But this is the one that happens to be my own.
Well, that is exactly how Mr. Clements explained why your writing will still be read, even with all this technology about with iPads. You can go out to Siberia, looking at a screen, because it is a particular perception of a.
And also, luckily for me, because I'm always there at a particular moment, it doesn't get out of date, does it? I say they know when I wrote it. That's it. I don't pretend it's a universal picture. It's going to be the same in 10 years' time. I was the same 25 years before. It's my moment, it's through my eyes. It's a very personal thing coming out of me. Take it or leave it.
Well, now, since I have this independent microphone, like David Ellis Thomas and me, we can ask the assembly whether there are any questions. Before I do that, prepare your questions while I slowly ask another question, which is about maps. Because it was also noticed how many maps people, the artists that have responded to your work, how many maps there are in their work. There are all sorts of maps. And you are very fond of maps as well. But obviously, because you've travelled all over the world and they're of practical use to find where you are. But not only that, is it?
No, it's not. I think they're things of beauty, very, very often, beautiful things in themselves. And also the fact that they represent the place before my eyes is a sort of allegory, isn't it? They are an allegory of what we're looking at. So I've always loved maps. And just somebody mentioned the other day, I like the fact that under a carpet at home, I keep a map, a 1930s map of Egypt, which was bound, very grandly bound. I didn't like the binding. So I've put it under the carpet in the hope that people walk over it and squash the binding, you see what I mean? So gradually it gets flat. If you ever come, I'll show you. It's lovely.
Oes 'na gwestiynau? Would anybody like to ask? Yeah.
Why?
Oh, not the dog. No. Oh, okay.
Well, there's another dog in my back. Jan, why did Trieste become such a watershed for you?
Because it was the very first foreign city that I'd ever lived in for a time. And the reason was that I ended up there with the British Army at the end of the war when we were preparing to go on to Palestine. And so I was stuck there for a bit by the nature of things. And I fell in love with the place and its air of bitter melancholy and charm. And I've since then gone back and back again to Trieste. And I've written this book, which I believe to be my best book, as a matter of fact, simply because of the power of the city. Does that answer? No, I don't live anywhere. If I don't live in Llywelyn, I want to live in the middle of Manhattan. You do. Did, yeah.
Of all your many travels, Jan, did you ever take something apart from the love of the place, which you communicate to us amazingly, any possession, any kind of object of remembrance of that place?
Yes, I did. A model ship. What? Sorry? Yes, what's the technology? Yes, I do bring back things from the places I go to, but it's nearly always a model ship. Unfortunately, because my house is full of books, bookcases, I can fit in these little model ships by the relevant books, if you see what I mean. So if it's an Arab one, it's got a dhow beside it. If it's a Portuguese one, it's got a little Portuguese, that sort of thing. But otherwise, in the way of souvenirs, no, I don't really bring things back. Just the things like that I like anyway, and which can only be bought where you are. Because I want the model to be made by people on the spot, which they usually are. Does that answer the question? Otherwise, memories.
Dwi'n mynd I fyny y gyfeisiau.
Jan, as you live in Llanwstumdwy, which to me is one of the beautiful places of Wales, I'm completely puzzled as to what attracts you to Manhattan. Is it because it's so different? Or because it is the buildings, or the people, or the whole ecosystem of Manhattan? Yeah, they're just such... That's why, right.
Could you repeat that, John? The world is listening. Le monde écoute.
Where did I start? You asked because why did I want to live either in Llanwstumdwy or Manhattan? Because they're opposites, really, isn't it? Yeah. Because the one side is just tranquil beauty and lovely people and everybody nice and everybody happy, I hope. The other one is full of vim and toughness and things. But I love the look of Manhattan. I think it's a very beautiful city, very underrated, though it's just beginning to lose some of its quality. But that is why the two things appeal to me so much, because they're exact opposites. But another place I sort of want to live really is Point Reyes, which is north of San Francisco. And I don't know if anybody remembers the Houston family. Emma Houston was an MP, and his brother, David Houston, both hot Welshmen. The brother was an academic who taught at Berkeley, and he went to live in Point Reyes, where I used to meet him, and he used to come to us. And he seemed to me to have got it absolutely fixed. He loved coming to Wales always. He loved living in Point Reyes. And one of the reasons he loved painting for Point Reyes was that he could swim every morning of his life before breakfast in the Pacific Ocean. So the dear old boy went out swimming last year into the Pacific Ocean in the dawn, and bonk, he had a heart attack and died there and then. It was a perfect life, wasn't it? He had a lovely life. He died in the very place he loved doing what he wanted. So I hope that'll work for me too.
Dyn melyn.
Allai ofyn I ti, Twm, ym mha ffyrdd wyt ti wedi cael dy ddylanwadu gan Jan pan wyt ti'n ysgrifennu a dolygu, canu, gwneud y peth eraill. A oes na rhyw enghreifftiau, a ydy wedi bod yn rhyw enghraifft I ti, neu rhyw fath o ysbrydoliaeth mewn rhyw ffordd arbennig, ac hefyd I Jan, a gaf I gofyn I ti, a wyt ti o gwbl wedi cael rhyw fath o ddylanwad gan dy fab yn hyn?
Iawn. Arwch chi gyfeithi na? Ia, mae hwn yn un anodd ydi dylanwa Jan arna fi. Wel, y fi ydi fan mwyaf Jan. Beth rhyfedd i ddweud, mae'n berffaith wir. Swn i'n medru siarad am yn hir iawn am y peth, ond gwir amdani ydy bod Jan yn esiampl i mi, heblaw bod fi'n fab, iddi wrth gwrs, o yr awdur, yr artist ymroddedig, proffesiynol, sydd yn cyfri y gelf, y grefft honno, fel cymryd y grefft honno o ddifri, nid hobi ydy'r grefft, ond galwedigaeth a gwaith a llafur a rhywbeth y dyla rhywun ymroed iddo fo'n llwyr. A pan fydd bobl yn dweud, yn aml ydy'r gwir, wrth bobl fatha fi, yw rhyw hobi di o de, pan os ydych chi'n cael gwaith call. Na, mae hyn yn digwydd o hyd, achos mae'n anodd gweld o'r tu allan faint o waith mae awdur neu ganwr neu fardd yn ei wneud, yn dydi. Mae gyd yn digwydd yn ei ben. Mae'n waith calad iawn. A dyna dwi wedi ddysgu ar hyd y blynyddoedd, ydy hynny, bod rhaid i gymryd o ddifri. A peidio bod ofn i gymryd o ddifri. A mi swn i'n licio fawr iawn y ddisgyblaeth sgyn Jan gyn ni, sydd weithiau'n ymddangos yn hunanol. Hunanol ydy'r gair mae llawer yn ei ddeud, fel am nhw'n disgrifio'r math o'r waith, achos mae o weithiau'n dŵar yn chi, a'ch teulu, a'ch anwyliaid, achos gweithgarwch unig iawn ydi o. Unrhyw fath o greu, ond i bai bych chi licio cydweithio fel llwyth o feirdd eraill, a dwi'n yn licio hynny llawer. Ond amball un o gyffelu fryd, fel arall mae o'n waith unig, a o'r tu allan yn ymddangos yn hunanol. A dyna'r wers fawr y dwi wedi dysgu wrth Jan. Bod rhaid, mae yna ddyn Gwyn eisiau siarad yna.
Wel, os ga i ategu beth mae Twm yn dweud fan hyn, fel rhywun sydd yn edmygu gwaith Twm a gwaith Jan, beth dwi i weld yn debyg ydy bod y ddau yn defnyddio delweddau diraethol ac yn osgoi'r haniaethol yn rhoi delweddau ac yn, mae'n waith gweledol iawn. Mae Jan yn cynsurio tirwedd yn y dinaswedd. Da chi'n gweld y lluniau, rhai o'r dyfyniadau nes i darllen gyna. A mae Twm hefyd yn ei ganeuon ac yn ei farddoniaeth. Ac y gwir amdani ydy, dyna'r sgwennu gorau. A dwi'n meddwl, mwy o'n byd mae rhywun yn darllen sgwennu da, mwy o'n byd mae o'n dylanwadu ar y sawl sydd yn sgwennu ei hun. Achos crefft ydi sgwennu fel pob gwaith arall ynde. Ond dwi yn gweld sefydlgrwydd mawr rhwng y dullia a Jan a Twm yn ddefnyddio yn ei gwaith. A da chi wastad yn gweld y llun. Da chi ddim yn gorfod trio darganfod yr ystyr.
Yeah, that was a question about marmalade. It was also asked how I have influenced Jan over 90 years.
Decisively.
Decisively. There you are, decisively. I'd like to add one thing. That I have mostly written poetry and songs, things to be heard, you know. But all Jan's writing is to be heard. It's supposed to be spoken aloud. We heard this morning. And it was described as Jan reading every single sentence he writes aloud. But I know that it's true, that you hear the sound of the words and you hear the cadence of the sentence.
I do, because I'm musical. I come from a very musical family, so music has played a large part in every aspect of my life, including the writing. And it's quite true that I like the sound of the words and the rhythm of the words, and I sing them to myself as I write them. I thought that was pretty obvious, really, but it's true of a lot of writers, I'm sure. Sometimes you read a sentence which is extremely unmusical, But then that's probably come from a different culture and has a different meaning and a different effect on people. Mine is meant to be heard. You know, and I do. I speak it aloud as I write it, indeed. And I wouldn't for a moment deny that it is sometimes affected by the music to spoil the meaning. And occasionally, not often, of course, my dear.
No, but sŵn a synwyr. Mae'r ddau i fod yn gyfartal ond amball waith. Mae'r sŵn mor ddifyr yn dydi. Nes mae chi'n meddwl, dwi'n meddwl, ti'n synwyr am un waith. Ddim byth y ffordd arall.
One of my favourite writers is Charles Doughty, the author of Travels on Arabia Deserta. And his opening lines are so beautiful. Years and years ago, I learned them by heart, and I used to sing them in the bath to a melody of my own invention. Do you want to hear just the beginning of it? A new voice held me as of an old land, as I wandered alone in the street called Straight, which is the beginning of the book. After when Doughty is in Jerusalem and to meet somebody in the road. And it sets the whole flavour of the book and the style of it and the music of it. And the music goes on and on for 800 pages. I never got to the end of it, nor has anybody else that I know. Does anybody here know the book? Travels on Arabia Deserta by Charles Doughty, you see? Nobody does. It's a great, great masterpiece that nobody's read. And even I, its greatest advocate, have never got to the end of it.
Yeah, but I think maybe you're the only person in the world who sings it in the bath.
Thanks. You spoke about words, but your books and what you're portraying also involves pictures in people's minds. Would you say that would be the case?
Yes, I'm sure that's true. I don't altogether like having my books illustrated for that reason, because the truth of the picture is not necessarily my truth, if you see what I mean. And I can see that people might look at that and say, this is nonsense, nothing like what Jan Morys writes. But it is, in a way, it is, because the two effects, the effect it had upon the camera is different to the effect it had upon me. Does that answer the question? Rather brilliantly, I thought.
There's obviously a public Jan Morys that we see here today. Is there a big change in your inner life that is very different from the public persona that we see?
I don't think life's a great variety, but the variety has been public, hasn't it? I haven't hidden any part of it, as far as I know. So what you see is me. What you see is what you get. Not at all. I'll change it if you like.
It's an allegory.
Yes, it's an allegory.
Di Davies Iwan I'm angen meic.
I didn't know about your sketching process. I mean, that picture of Venice is just mind-blowing. Did you do it from a photograph or on the spot? Did you sit there for a week?
Half and half. I did a lot of it from memory, and then I did some of it by copying the buildings. But it consists of 8, I think, typing sheets of paper, which I did at different times, and then I stuck them all together and made that masterpiece. Which for me is a bit of a joke, partly because it's got hidden in it, very carefully hidden, figures of my 2 smaller children, older children in fact now, going to school. They went to school in Venice, and they had to go over one of the bridges, and you can see if you look carefully, 2 little tiny specks, which is them, but only I know. And they.
Yeah, well, I'd like to come to another subject now. In your 90th year, a cyfnodorion decided to award you with a medal for a lifetime service to Wales. I don't think Iwan has got this medal yet, but maybe one day. Na, bod yn gas ydw i ddim yn gystadleuaeth, na di. Ydy Iwan ddim yn 90 eto, na di. But you said to me at the time that it was the best thing that's ever happened to you.
That was the happiest moment of my life. Really, it really was. It was only last week. I've waited a long time for it. But at last, I was publicly sort of thanked for doing something for Wales, you know. And as I said at the time, that what I've done for Wales is infinitesimal compared with what Wales has done for me. But the moment when it was suddenly publicly recognised like that was a wonderful moment, brought the tears to my eyes as they're beginning to now, as a matter of fact. I was so touched and moved by it. It was simply lovely, I thought. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
What was the question?
The question was, in a way, do you remember the time, many years ago, when things were more exciting in Wales? When Wheel Sam came knocking at the door in Trevan and said, do you have room for a man who has just been released from prison for his patriotic work in this country? And you said yes. Do you remember that?
Of course I do, yeah.
Say a little about that time.
Well, it was a moment of great passions and even violences in Wales, when the whole country was in slight uproar and young bloods everywhere were doing their best for patriarchal reasons. And it's true that Sam came to our door and said, would I put one of these characters up? And I said, of course, I will. Just as I would now if it was a villain from the Calais, you know. What's the jungle. Of course I would. And I did to him, and he came, and he inspired me in many ways. As a matter of fact, having there was wonderful. I wasn't going to say who it was. His young friends came in. They were all wonderful people, I thought. They were good-looking, and they were full of life and fun and ideals. I thought it was marvellous, and I've never looked back. Thank you very much.
Well, and what about Wales? Is Wales itself even an allegory?
Well, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but of course it is a major allegory, isn't it, for everybody, for all of us. I'm quite sure we see more than just a thing on the map or a slab of ground in Wales. It's full of suggestions of memories and aspirations and hopes and loves, and the whole thing is one vast allegory. So, yes.
Wel, rwan, dwi am dirwyn y sgwrs I ben os gai, ond dwi am ofyn un peth arall. Ond I bai bod yna gwestiynau eraill, mae croeso I chi holi. Iawn. Soon.
It was said this morning that you were not a religious person, but many of us have heard you make a plea, in fact, for kindness. Would you like to say a word about that, please?
Yes, and both things are true. I'm not a religious person because I don't believe in any faith. I'm an agnostic, except for one thing. I do believe the answer to all problems is kindness. If you have to choose, simplify things, instead of having a religion which requires mumbo-jumbo and things you believe in or don't believe in, something as simple and as obvious and easy as kindness seems to me the most powerful instrument of all towards a happy life and a happy conclusion for all of us. So yes, I do believe in kindness. And I happen to see today a quotation somewhere from Henry James, you remember the author, and he said in 1860 something, there are three important things in life. The first one is kindness, the second one is kindness, and the third one is kindness. And I agree with him. It helps us all if we stick to kindness. It can't always, of course, all be beastly, heaven knows, me more than anyone. Nevertheless, I stick to the idea of kindness as being the best answer, best solution for all our problems, even for characters in the jungle.
Dwi'n meddwl bod yr ateb dwytha yna'n lle da iawn I ni dirwyn y sgwrs I ben, ond mi hoffwn ni ddeud hyn wan de. Meddyliwch chi ffasiwn hwyl y dwi wedi gael yn fab I Twm Morys ar hyd y blynyddoedd.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. Diolch. Au revoir tout le monde. Nos vadach.